Salutations, respected viewers. I've been asked by an adoring fan to make a video about the British Muslim community. Well, the British Muslim community is not something new, contrary to popular misconception. There have been Muslims living in the United Kingdom, well, since before the United Kingdom existed, since the early 17th century, possibly a few visitors prior to that. But certainly since the East India Company was founded on New Year's Eve, 1600, British people were travelling to India regularly, and some Indians were coming to the British Isles. India in those days, of course, included Pakistan and Bangladesh, though India wasn't very united at the time. And of the population of the subcontinent, perhaps 25% are Mohammedans. So some Muslims have been living here since then. Admittedly, these were tiny, tiny numbers. Almost all men, and they married British women who were brought up as Christians. These women didn't always convert, blah, blah, blah. It is only in the 19th century that the Muslim community starts to become in any way significant. Some Lascars, Indian sailors usually, settled in the UK, particularly the East End of London, to some extent Newcastle, Liverpool, Cardiff, other ports. So relations between the United Kingdom and its predecessor states were cordial on many occasions. The Spanish Armada, in 1588, France and the papacy attempted to invade England and Wales and Ireland, not Scotland actually. But Elizabeth I contacted the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul, saying could he create a diversion, and he attacked Spanish possessions in the Mediterranean. Therefore, Philip II of Spain was obliged to divert some of his warships to try and hold off the Ottoman Empire. So the first Indian restaurant in the United Kingdom was founded in 1810 in London. The site doesn't exist anymore, but there's a plaque on where it used to be. I'm probably going to mispronounce his name. Saika Din Muhammad. Din meaning faith. So I think his name is like Faith of Muhammad. So Muhammad here, of course, meaning the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. I think I've got the honorific right for him. So the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire was the Caliph of Sunni Muslims, as in like Khalifa, as in successor to the Prophet. So he was regarded as a leader by many Sunni Muslims. Not all Sunni Muslims accepted this. Some people say, oh really, that's just Turkish self-aggrandizement. Shia Muslims did not accept his paramountcy. So the British Empire was more Muslim than Christian, and indeed than Hindu. So it really paid for the UK to have an amicable relationship with the Ottoman Empire. And so the United Kingdom took pains to curry favour with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Until the 1820s, Sharia law was more humane than English law. You may know that until Sir Robert Peel reformed the penal code, there were over 200 death penalty offences in the United Kingdom, like robbery on a navigable river, but not on other rivers, or cutting down a tree in Downing Street, or starting a fire at a dockyard, even if by accident, and forgery and blasphemy, and grand larceny, which could mean stealing a wallet or a horse, all sorts of things. Strong evidence of malice in children. Notice the malice didn't have to be proven. You only had to demonstrate strong evidence of malice. In 1801, a 13-year-old boy was hanged for stealing a spoon from a house. So not only was it larceny, not sure if it was grand larceny, it might have been petty larceny, but the fact he stole it from a house made it burglary. So these were extraordinarily harsh times, and Sharia law was lenient by comparison. So that was that. So the British Muslim community is about 5% of the population these days, and growing rapidly, because the British Muslim community has got a young average age. So you look at, say, nonagenarians in the United Kingdom, and they're 99% white. Well, they're dying off. The junior generation is more Muslim than 5%. Moreover, there's a higher fertility rate amongst the Muslim community. Getting married younger is more common than amongst the general population, and having children is definitely on the agenda. You know, the great majority of Muslims would consider that their duty, and it would just be wrong. You wouldn't enter into marriage not intending to have children unless you're too old for them. Whereas other people tend to view children as optional. Many want them, a few don't. So the majority of Muslims in this country are Sunnis. So about 80% of Muslims worldwide are Sunnis. In the United Kingdom, it's not as high as that, because immigration to the United Kingdom by Muslims has been particularly from areas with a higher percentage of Shia than in the general Muslim population. So 20% max of Muslims worldwide are Shia, but British Muslims are a bit higher than that. So the British Muslim community particularly comes from Pakistan. About 40% of all British Muslims have ancestry in Pakistan, which has got perhaps 20% Shia in its population. And Shia were more likely to move out because they were not always liked by their Sunni neighbours. Iran is overwhelmingly Shia. Where else have British Muslims come from in significant numbers? Well, Bangladesh, they're not very Shia. I'm just trying to think. Not other major Shia countries apart from that. A little bit Syria and Lebanon. But let's say Egypt's almost 99% Sunni amongst the Muslims. They've got a significant Christian minority. Nigeria and so on, about 99% Sunni. So there are many ethnicities within the UK Muslim population. Majority of British Muslims are of the South Asian ethnicity. I should point out that, Muslims in the United Kingdom are not all British citizens. Some of them are born citizens or naturalised citizens, but some have lived in the UK, well, for one day up to many years, but are not citizens in a few cases. So, of course, there are a few converts, people who are indigenous British, whatever that is, because white Britons, looking back far enough, they'll almost all have French or Danish roots if you go back a millennium. So what else? Yeah, there's obviously a very broad range of attitudes amongst the UK Muslim community. Some people are very lax in their observance, liberal to the point of unbelief, and completely integrated into the mainstream of the UK community, and wouldn't really know the first thing about Islam, wouldn't have a copy of the Quran in their house, things like that, and wouldn't observe Ramadan, say, oh, well, get real, that doesn't work these days. Or a guy who considered himself a Muslim saying to me, well, come on, we've got to pay interest into bank accounts. This is the 21st century. And there's for that, everything to people who are complete reactionaries and, I think it'd be fair to say, extreme in their ideology. And of course, there are plenty of people who are somewhere in the middle. So that's that. There would be people who would happily describe themselves as fundamentalists. People say they're very liberal Muslims. You might be a liberal Muslim who's sincere and zealous about their faith, but into the Quilliam Foundation kind of thing. The Quilliam Foundation, incidentally, was founded by a white Britisher who converted to the Islamic faith in the 19th century. Well, I think it was set up by him, but it was named in his honour, and it was refounded perhaps 10 years ago. And it's a sort of de-radicalisation program to say, yeah, we believe in modern interpretation of Islam to fit with the United Kingdom as it currently is. But they take their Quranic scholarship seriously. But some people say they're sellouts. So Lord Stanley, a peer of the realm known as, he converted to Islam in the 19th century, and he was in the House of Lords. There are now several Muslim peers in the House of Lords. Lord Ahmed was one of the first. Muhammad Sarwar was the first British Muslim elected to the House of Commons way back in 1997, a Labour man elected one of the Glasgow constituencies. So the British Muslim community is not evenly spread throughout the United Kingdom. It's heavily concentrated in the major conurbations: London, Birmingham, Manchester, to some extent Bradford, which is over 25% Muslim. So there'll be large swathes of countryside where there are virtually no Muslims. Northern Ireland, apart from Belfast, is very rural, and that's not even 1% Muslim. So there are Muslims in all occupations, in the police, in the NHS, blah, blah, blah. And so obviously the Muslim community is demonised, but whenever there is a terrorist attack, it's obviously the police are protecting the public, Muslim police officers too, and Muslim doctors and nurses are saving lives all the time. So unfortunately, our Muslim confrères do not get sufficient credit for that kind of thing. Anyway, they're Muslims in all political parties. However, the Muslim community breaks heavily towards Labour. 2003, the time of the Iraq War, the Labour Party lost a lot of Muslim support. However, that's a done deal, and it's since gone back quite a lot. So there were a few Muslims in UKIP, for instance. UKIP's more or less a busted flush now. So the Muslim community is growing rapidly, and that's that. Well, with the Muslim community, as the government is determined to reduce immigration, there'd be less of that. A lot of people used to have arranged marriages, often to cousins or second cousins in the old country. But now the government has been very restrictive on that, saying you have to be over 21. Well, I think that's preposterous. The legal age of marriage in Great Britain is 16. It's 17 in Northern Ireland. But if you want to get married at 16, you should be allowed to get married. We shouldn't restrict an adult's rights and raise it to 21 only for this category of people. And people have to be earning over £30,000 a year to bring in a non-EU spouse, which is unfair. Let's not penalise people on low incomes. They're entitled to love too. There we are. So the Muslim community has somewhat different attitudes from wider society. Perhaps surprisingly, the Muslim community is more British in its outlook than wider society, and proud of that and so on, although some people have got some regressive attitudes. So that's the UK Muslim community. It's perhaps become more expressive its identity in recent years. Often the first generation immigrants in the 50s and 60s were quite low-key about their faith, but there was a real revival of Islam in the 80s, partly because the Islamic Revolution in Iran and Saudi Arabia, even though it's a Sunni country, started going that way as well. So that was felt over here. So will it revert to being fairly secular, or will it continue to be, how can I put it, fundamentalist, for want of a better word? Doesn't have to be a bad thing, but there we are. That's the British Muslim community, a fascinating topic I could discuss all day.